Hello, everyone. So this will be our last live session for this course. Will be about to review some topics for your exam, mainly based on your question on the Google Doc. We do have a few questions there, not too many, so I can finish them rather quickly. But before that, I would like to talk about maybe just exam, just in general, just to reiterate the policy together with you. So just make sure you don't really miss any important information. And then at the end, I will also open the floor for any question you might have. Okay, we'll see. Anyway, so you can feel free to type your question on the chat. Feel free. I will try to watch that maybe once in a while. Okay. Anyway, feel free to interrupt me as usual. So that'll be absolutely fine. Okay, so okay. To start with, nothing to do with this semester 1022, but I did have some emails from some of you asking me if I will be teaching 2030, the subsequent course to 1022. So I more or less got confirmed already by the departments. So I will be teaching 2030 in the coming fall, not the summer, but the coming fall. So for 21, I will be teaching 2 sections for 2030. I believe tentatively it will be section B and section E. So you can take a look. Maybe you can double check if you got my name. But of course, either you can take it with me or you want to avoid me for 2030. It's up to you. Anyway. But 2030 will be some exciting course to actually go much more in depth about the OOP and also some more interesting case studies to actually look at if you take the course with me. All right, just something to tell you. All right, and then the next item, I would like to just go over the exam PDF guide that has been made available to you actually before your study day, way before that. So hopefully all of you actually have read it. If you haven't, now will be the time to actually clarify any policy. So I think quite a bunch of the questions on the Google Doc, they are somehow related to the exam PDF guide. So maybe your fellow student haven't actually read it yet. So let's now clarify. Let me show to you how to go over how to get to the PDF. And then, so if you go to the E-class site, it will be MMO, okay, the common one. At the moment, under exam, you will only see exam information, which is PDF guide, and also practice final exam. At the moment, the final exam is actually hidden from you, but the link will be opened and also enabled on Tuesday, right? So for now, you wouldn't see that, but I'll be in touch about when it will be open. Most likely, maybe late on Monday or early on Tuesday, definitely before your exam, so you don't need to worry. Let me now open the PDF for your exam information. So this PDF, by the way, is not new. It's being made available to you a long time ago. So let's now go over that quickly, right? And feel free to ask me questions if you want to clarify anything here. All right, let's now take a look. Okay, your exam will be next Tuesday, April 20th. Okay, and then it will be, according to the syllabus, it will be 34% of your course grade for everybody, right? And then it's going to be strictly individual. However, it's actually open book. So open book in the sense that you can feel free to actually refer to your lecture notes. You can refer to your tutorial videos, refer to any study material that has been made available to you. And you are allowed to actually use Eclipse if you wish. I will elaborate on this point a little bit later, okay? But it's open book, however, strictly individual, right? You shouldn't really collaborate with your fellow students, either inside or outside the class in any way, okay? That's hopefully that's clear to you. So what about the timing? So unlike your written test or programming test, where you're simply given 24 hours, it's not the case for your exam. Let me emphasize that. So your exam will be strictly 120 minutes, 2 hours. Okay, and then the starting time will be 9:05, not 9 a.m., not 9:10, 9:05, which means at 9:05, your exam link will be enabled so you can start the exam. And then you got exactly 2 hours maximum to complete your exam and then submit the answer. And then the exam link will be timeout actually at 11:05, basically. Okay, so the time limit will be strict. Okay. And then that's exactly what I said, okay? And then you don't need to download any starter project like in your programming tests. You don't have to. It's more like a written test, okay? And all the questions, the exam question will be answered on the MMO E-class site. So like what I said, you have to go to the MMO, not the MMN, not the O, just MMO, the class of the common E-class site. Go there, and then under the exam section, this particular link for final exam will be made available. Currently just hidden, right? Not yet. Okay, and this section here, I wouldn't go over the details. However, if you somehow have to miss the exam, so read this section very carefully and make sure you follow the process carefully, okay? So let me just give you a little bit of idea. So if you really have to miss the exam, so please follow the procedure, let me know, and then I'll let you know about the approval. However, please understand that if you miss the exam, if your deferral exam is approved, which means you can take the exam later, only under legitimate reason, of course. So in that case, your course grade will be delayed for submission. So it will be sometime maybe in the summer. So let me just tell you that, because it will take us some time to actually redesign the exam to be appropriate and also to be fair for those who actually took it in time. Okay, so if you really got any emergency, any medical reason, for example, please read the section carefully and then get in touch, okay? Okay, let's talk about the rules for the exam. So as I said, the exam will be open at 9:05 Toronto time, okay, Eastern time, and then on Tuesday, April 20th. And then I'll send you a reminder maybe on Monday as well, okay, just to make sure you're actually all set. And the exam will be closed at 11:05 EST, so you got 2 hours, okay? For those of you who actually got the university letter to be granted for extra time, you don't need to worry. I will also take care of that, right? It's required by the university. All right, so once you click on the link, let's say at or after 9:05, so that's the exact start time for the exam. By the way, there will be some plagiarism check. Sorry. There will be one academic honesty quiz for you to take, pretty much like your programming test and also your written test. I'll make the academic honesty quiz earlier, maybe available earlier, so you wouldn't waste any time for your actual exam. So you don't need to worry, right? I'll give you the detail on Monday. Okay. So once you actually start the exam in time, the exam will be disabled on 11:05. So let's say for example, for whatever reason, if you somehow you miss the starting time, you only start at 9:30. Let's say you missed the first 25 minutes. Will you be able to still grant it for 2 hours? The answer is no, because if you start at 9:30, you will still have to finish until 11:05, right? So that's really important for you to note. Okay, so even though it's a written test, when I say written test, I'll talk about the format in the next section. So you will be mainly given multiple choice question, but there might be some question there. Maybe you have to fill in the blanks, or maybe you have to write some code. But the code wouldn't be like what you have to write, like an entire classes or methods, like in your programming test, but just more like a written test question. Imagine that you're just doing this more like on the paper, but now just on the screen. Okay. So what about the formats? So most of the questions, so I would say at least 60% of your question will be multiple choice. And you have seen that already on your written test. So for this part, the format shouldn't be too surprising to you. Okay. And then the remaining part, up to 40%, it could be none. It could be up to 40%, where you have to write some Java code. It could be a single line. It could be a fragment. So no more than 40%, right? So that's about the format. Okay. Another thing I want to say quickly before I come back here, before talk about the coverage, I think some of you also asked me about how many questions will there be, right? Also on the Google Doc and also by email. So this is the best answer I can give for now, because I'm still, me and my co-instructor, we are still designing the question for you right now. So I would say between 60 and 60 questions for 2 hours, okay? I think for the practice test, you actually got 60 questions for 1 hour. So don't panic. We wouldn't give you 120 questions for 2 hours. That's not the case, right? So don't think that way. So you can take this, take my word for this. There will be between 40 to 60 questions for 2 hours. Okay. So roughly speaking, you will need to take about on average 2 to 3 minutes for each question. But as you know, some question might take much shorter than 2 minutes, and some question might take much longer than 2 minutes, right? But on average, it should be about 2 to 3 minutes. All right, I'll talk about the last point in a moment, but let me go back. Okay. All right, let's now talk about the coverage. This is a comprehensive exam, meaning that it's going to cover everything that we actually have covered in the course. So you have to review all the lectures and also all the weekly tutorial videos. If you're from section O and you're watching this video right now, so for the lecture video, you don't need to watch mine. Okay, you just need to review the lecture materials for your particular section. Okay. However, me and the instructor from section O, we will actually review each other's question to make sure. So all the all the question will be asking only what's covered in our section, right? So for example, let's say for section MMN, for you guys, for section MMN, for example, we didn't cover anything about maybe collection.sort and do while loop, switch statement, for example. So you can be sure that it wouldn't appear on the exam. All right. Okay, so now let's go over very quickly here. So for the Java API, you're only supposed to know what we cover in the lecture. So math, array list, and also hash table or hash map, right? So that's something we spoke about in the lecture. And the string API, they will not be covered in the exam. Okay. And what about the methods for these classes? I would say if we're asking you questions for methods that we already cover or in the lecture, for example, for array list, we have covered index of, we cover add, we cover remove. So in that case, the question themselves wouldn't really mention the API summary anymore. However, if there's any new method which we didn't cover, but for example, for array list, in that case, we will include the API summary for you. Okay. And what about lab assignments? We wouldn't really ask you details about a particular lab assignment. However, the programming concept that you're supposed to grasp, for example, nested loop, or maybe OOP, calling methods, defining accessor versus mutator, etc. That's something you should know. All right. And also, of course, for the tutorial, I think for the weekly tutorial videos, I presume all of you actually have followed through all the week's tutorial videos so far. So the best way to really review the tutorial videos would be just open up your Eclipse projects for all the 12 weeks. Just go over very quickly about all the code that we have developed together in those tutorial sessions. And then if there's any particular part you're not too sure about what that it is supposed to mean, how that is supposed to work, and then you can actually go back to the tutorial video to watch only that part specifically. I don't think you have the luxury of time to actually rewatch all the tutorial at this point. It's not recommended, right? Only watch the part you need. And you can do something similar when you review your lecture notes as well, right? Focus more on the examples that we have covered, and especially how you do the tracing about why a particular fragment of code will work and why it will not work. So that's something I'll recommend. Okay, and then, pretty much like before, so anything about GitHub or anything about how you use the remote labs, they will not be covered, right? Definitely not, okay? And then what about Android mobile programming, right? Especially the topics that we cover in week number 9, if I remember correctly. So you will not be asked to build some Android mobile app during the exam, okay? It's not feasible, okay? Also, it's not really the best way to really test you about mobile programming developments. We already let you practice them from your lab number 7, lab number 8. However, the concept that's actually covered in week number 9 tutorial may be covered in the exam. For example, I'm just listing some example here. So that's but you still need to review your notes. For example, the model view controller pattern that we spoke about in the week 9 tutorial, and also how you attaching the controller method to some GUI button, right? You don't need to operate that, easily in Android Studio, but at least you should know the concept. You should know that there's such a step you have to do, for you when you actually build a mobile app. All right, so that's about the coverage here. And then some study tips over here. So it's really meant to test your understanding, pretty much the same statement I make about written test. And then you want to go through the lecture and tutorial materials to review the concepts and example, right? And also rewatch the parts of the lecture, tutorial, Q&A videos if necessary, okay? And then the practice question, I believe all of you actually know its existence. Maybe you should try. And notice that we will actually close this practice test before the exam. So you will not be able to get access to the practice question during the exam. It's not possible, okay? So if you want to practice, please do so as soon as possible. One more point before I take your questions, okay? What about, there will be actually quite many tracing questions. And you know the tracing question very well. Maybe we'll give you a fragment of Java code and then simply ask you what the output is. Or maybe we'll give you some multiple choice about let's say we want this particular console output, for example, and then given these following choices of programs, which one is going to produce that particular output, right? That's just these are just two examples. So now I want to make a recommendation, just give you some general advice. It would be your judgment. Okay, let me just highlight a different color here. It would be your judgment of tracing by hands or by Eclipse. So I think there will be certain questions. It might be much easier if you simply just enter the code into Eclipse and give a try and see what the output is. If you can do it, good for you. You can definitely do it. It's actually okay because it's open book. On the other hand, there will be some questions where it might take you more time. Then it might take you more time if you simply just try to enter the code fragment into Eclipse and try to get things to work as a console application and see what the outputs are. It might be much more effective if you can simply just trace the code by hands, maybe by looking at how the classes are related to each other and see what the choices are, and then make the correct choice. So it will be up to your judgment. I cannot really say you should use Eclipse or you should not use Eclipse. It's kind of up to you. All right. All right, so guys, I think that's about what I want to say about the exam. So I will pause right now and open the floor for you to have any question related to the exam before I start going over the Google Doc questions, please. You can type on the chat or you can speak up, either way.
Can I ask a question about what you meant on the PDF?
Sure.
When you mentioned
which part?
So in the coverage for the exam,
Sure.
So you mentioned model view controller pattern. I mean, I think I know what it means, but can you elaborate on like what you
Sure.
like
Sure.
by that?
So for the model view controller pattern, so okay, let me mention that. You can check the notes. So the model view controller basically means you got three components for your Android app, for the counter and also for your greeting apps, for example, the ones we did in the tutorial. And we actually follow the same pattern for also your lab number 7 and lab number 8. So think about these components and then review the notes about how these components are related to each other, especially to see the dependency between these three components. Does the model depend on the controller? And does the controller depend on the model? And does the GUI depends on the model, and etc. So that's a very important concept for you to actually review. Does it help? Hello? Is it clear to you? All right, I presume it is. All right. All right, let me see this. I got, okay, one question from Sai over here. So do you get part marks for short answer question? Okay, so I think it depends, okay? When you say short answer, I want to be very careful over here. So when you say short answers, right? So for example, if the E-class, I think that there are two kinds of question in E-class where it looks like a short answer. For example, like a fill in the blanks. So maybe you got something over here, and then the question is for you to fill in something over here, okay? Or maybe there will be a question text, and then you have to put something here on the answer box, right? And then usually they would say put a single line of code which will make the code work, for example. So these are called short answer question in E-class. However, they will be graded automatically. So whenever you are asked to fill in the blanks, or you are asked to actually simply, as long as you're not really asked to explain something in detail, in that case, you will know for this question, like a short answer, fill in the blanks, such, that means they will be graded automatically. So that means there's only a single unique answer that's actually acceptable. In that case, there wouldn't be any part marks. Either you get it or you don't get it, right? It's just the way E-class is. On the other hand, if you're asked a question where you're asked to maybe explain or to justify why, for example, how the aliasing works for this particular example, in that case, your question will be graded by maybe some TA. In that case, yes, you might get some part marks. So it really depends. But I think, as I said, most of the question will be multiple choice, like auto-graded questions, multiple choice based nature. So that means most of the question you wouldn't get any part marks, right? Another thing to note, I'm pretty sure all of you are being aware, actually aware of this. So when I spoke about the multiple choice, so it actually depends on how many correct answers are there, right? So maybe if you haven't seen this section before, actually I mentioned this section for every of your written test. So in that case, if you got multiple correct answers, in that case, if you choose any wrong answer, you will get some marks deducted, but you wouldn't get any negative overall, right? That's something you can also review. All right. And then Kenneth, is the test sequential, or are we allowed to go back and back to the question? The answer is you will be able to actually go back to the question in any order you like. So it's not really sequential. Okay. Usually, if the exam is actually sequential, we would have told you much earlier. So at this point, I can tell you that it's going to be you can just jump back and forth to the question. So it will be somehow to your advantage. So if you really find some question, maybe we're taking more time to think about and to answer, you can skip that and then come back to that question later. All right. All right. Any more questions?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Here. Before the time is up, if we couldn't submit the test, the system will automatically submit for us or not?
The system will yes, the system will automatically submit for you. Yes, I chose that setup option there to say any unsubmitted attempt will actually be submitted automatically. However, I would say unless you really don't have time to submit, don't really take chance, because I'm not sure what's going to happen if you simply just wait for the system to actually submit for you. It should be okay. However, I would say also try to submit yourself. Just leave yourself enough time to submit. But the answer is yes, the system should also submit for you. That's the option I would choose when I set up the exam.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, good. All right, from AV, for the written code question, will they just be a few lines of code, or could it be a full class? They mostly a few lines. There wouldn't be a full class like what you had to do for your programming test. A few lines, yes. Mostly just fill in the blanks. However, in some way, that means you have to understand the context, and also you need to understand the rest of the class that's given to you, right? So it's more like a different challenge, different way of challenging your understanding, of course. All right, any more questions about the exam? Yeah, absolutely. I think for the exam, I think it's mainly just to, the exam is not necessarily to test you whether you can write Java code. It's kind of opposite, to see if you can read Java code, and then if you can understand how a given Java code actually will work. It's more like our focus. Yeah. All right, guys, I'll wait just one more moment. If you got any more questions related to the policy coverage or whatever you want to talk about for the exam. All right. I'm a little bit surprised this time. Like usually when I hold a review session, usually the first question I got asked by my student would be, maybe you guys are confident. Usually a student asks me whether the exam will be difficult or easy, right? That's usually what student asks me. I'm pretty sure you want to ask that as well. Let me ask that for your on your behalf. So I think the exam will not be easy, okay? Because that's really one way for us to really teach, to really assess if you have understood all the concept, all together as a proficient programmer. However, we do also estimate to see what it will take for you to answer within 2 hours. So I would say maybe you will rather be over prepared as opposed to under prepared. So really try to do your best to really go over maybe all the written tests that we have taken, and also all the challenging example that I spoke about, either in the lecture, in the tutorial videos, or in the written notes, or maybe in the Q&A. right? So I would say do as much preparation as possible. If you ended up finding the exam actually easier than you expected, I would say good for you, right? That's to your advantage. But the exam is not going to be easy. All right, that's something I want to tell you before that happens. Sarah, how much should it take for us to finish the test? Is the estimated time more than what it is expected for us? If you're talking about the exam, as I said before, you will be given 2 hours for the exam, right? And then you are given between 40 to 60 questions. So that means on average, it should take about between 2 to 3 minutes for each question. So that's the estimate I can say. But again, some question might take much shorter, some question might take much longer, right? But on average. From Joseph, are there multiple answers to choose from the multiple choice? Yes, definitely. So there will be quite many cases where there might be more than one correct answer you have to choose. There are also questions, maybe fewer. There are fewer questions. There's only a unique answer that you have to choose, right? Different. Yeah.
But for the multiple questions, it won't indicate this is a single selection or multiple selections.
Oh, you will actually. So I'm not sure if you noticed that. So in E-class, actually, so for example, if you got radio button, like a small circle like this, so that means it's a single answer.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah, sure. I'm glad you asked. So on the other hand, if you actually got, on the other hand, if you see the choices are like a boxes, like a checkbox. Yeah, that's something that's not really covered by this particular course, but I guess if you go to 3461, the user interface course, I think they will talk about the psychological or artistic design for your GUI. In that case, they will actually see when to use single answer and when to use multiple answers. But anyway, it's not really covering this course. But on the other hand, if you see the questions actually got text like checkboxes, so that means there might be more than one. It could be that it turns out there's only one answer, only one correct answer. You'll just check one. If you believe there might be more than one, you can check two, right? So that's how you tell the difference. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Guys, any more questions? Okay, so feel free to ask me at the end. If you just if I will open the floor again. Okay. But for now, I would like to maybe just go over quickly the question that that's actually on your Google Doc, right? The first one, okay? This one here is something that we didn't really cover so far. However, implicitly, only cover implicitly in your in this course. Let me give you a little bit of context. If you remember back in the elementary programming lecture on the very first week, I actually mentioned that in the lecture, whenever you want to compare primitive value, you should really use equal. And whenever you want to use, you want to compare the string values, you should really use dot equals, right? So equal for primitive, and also dot equals for strings. Okay. However, I think quite a good number of you actually asked me during my office hour, actually mainly during my office hour, to say that, well, actually in my lab, or in my programming test, I actually used equals for strings, but my code actually passed all the test cases, right? That's true. So that's kind of the context where if you ever got the confusion, hopefully after some example today, you can get some clarification. Okay. However, this particular scenario I'm going to clarify, you have to watch out for. Okay. So I think it's really good to know. Okay. Let me now. The question here is really. Let me just give you some short example here, just by your fellow students. Let's say you got some string A and hello, string B and also hello. You can see the way we actually initialize the two string variables are by string literals, right? Hello and hello. They spell the same. And then if you simply do A equals B, what I recommend you do in the lecture should be using dot equals. However, this one here is actually going to return true back to you, right? That's basically the starting point. for the question from your fellow student. So I'd like to cover this, maybe given as our final session, I would like to give you one rather complete example, not very long, but rather complete to give you the scenarios that you want to watch out for. I think even more of you actually run into this trouble here. For example, if you can remember back in your lab number 7 and lab number 8, where you were supposed to, number 1, to pass all the JUnit test cases for your model classes. And then number 2, you're actually going to build a controller class to make the app work. Some of you actually found that even though I pass all the JUnit test cases, but however, for some use scenarios, when I try to use the app to actually test it, they wouldn't pass. And for those of you who actually happen to actually fix the error, it has to do with you actually use equal rather than dot equals for comparing string values. Okay, if you actually ever got a struggle, so today I would like to also clarify that for you. All right. Okay, so let me now do the following. I'm going to use Eclipse to do some illustration over here, and then maybe do a little bit tracing as well. Okay, it wouldn't take very long. It's meant to be not too long in the example. Okay, let me just set up the Eclipse over here. Give me a moment. I think this will be useful information for you to know. It's I didn't really mention this in the tutorial videos and in the lecture because it's a little bit confusing, especially mentioning this in the beginning weeks. Okay, so I'll make this project available to you after when I make the recording available today. Let's now say new and then class. Let's call that maybe string tester. Let's use a console application over here. All right. Let's now start by doing this. Let's say string S1. Let me just emphasize, let me reiterate the points that your fellow student was trying to make, and I'll give you 3 different scenarios of creating strings. String S1, and then let's say Jackie over here. And then I would say string S2, since to be a different string. And then that's simply a initialized to be just the same string literal. Okay. So now if I say sys out over here, S1, let me just make some, let me just say S1 equals S2. Well, remember string is a reference type, meaning that if I try to say S1 equals S2, I'm really comparing to see are the addresses stored in S1 and S2 the same, right? That's really what's being asked over here. Let me maximize this. And also, if I try this, sys out S1 dot equals S2. Are S1 and S2, those two string values, equal by their contents. All right. All right. So now let's see what's going to happen here. So if I just try to, so guys, you want to try to predict what's going to be the output from these two printouts. So we are expecting 2 Boolean values to be printed out to the console. What should be the 2 Boolean outputs? Anybody? False, 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 true, true, false, true, true.
False, true.
False, true. Okay, sure. That's one answer here. And then I can see from Emmett, it's true, true. I suppose that's what you meant. Anybody else? All right, let's see what the result is. Okay, I also see another one, false, true. You know, let's see, try this. It's true, true. All right. For those of you, I think it's a no-brainer for this part here to be true, right? Because you can see Jackie is the same as Jackie. However, for S1 equals S2, you might be thinking as follows. You might be thinking that this Jackie literal, string literal here will be one object. And then this Jackie literal over here, string literal, just another string object. I think that's what you're thinking. That's very intuitive. I agree. However, that's not the case. Okay. Let me now say this. this is not just true for Java, but also for any other programming language that you might have a program in. So for example, if you go back to Python, go back to maybe C#, go back to maybe other programming language, whenever you got string literal, the compiler, well, I wouldn't go too much too many technical detail. Let me write it down. When string literals have the same, okay, let me put okay, when string literals have the same contents, in this case, this string literal has the same contents as this string literal. For efficiency optimization, Java compiler will only create a single object whose address is stored in those variable. Okay, so that's the short description quickly. Okay, so in this case, since this literal over here is the same as this literal at the runtime, rather than creating two string objects with the same contents Jackie, so what the compiler will actually ask the Java runtime to do is to create a single object called Jackie, and then let S1 and also S2 point to that same objects. That's only for string literal when you write it out explicitly. All right. Let me do one thing by comparison, and then I'll do another one that's more connected to your lab number 7 and lab number 8. Okay. So what about this? This might be something you haven't done so far because normally people don't do it. Okay. Let's say string S3 is, okay. Remember, string is a reference type, meaning that it should have a constructor, right? So I can say new string Jackie. So what this is saying is creates a new string object. So we are using the new keyword here to tell the compiler to create an explicitly new object at the runtime. So that should really contain this particular value Jackie, right? And let's have another one here. Let's say string S4, new string and Jackie. All right. So now let's now try to do the same kind of comparison over here. Okay, and then you can tell me what the answer is. S3 equals S4, and then S3 dot equals S4. All right, guys, another question for you. So you want to put on the chat or you want to speak it out, speak out. So what should be the Boolean output for this? False, 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 true, true, false, true, true. What should that be? What we got from the previous line was true, true, right? So what about now? So hopefully if you have been following through my description right now, hopefully that's actually easier for you to answer. I can see some answer for false true, very good, but with a question mark, which means you're a little bit hesitant about it, okay? And I can see another one false true, and I can see another one false false. However, false false is a little bit problematic over here. Just be careful. False false, when you're saying that this should be false, that's actually not right because you're comparing the contents between S3 and S4, right? You're not really comparing the addresses. So here, these two string objects, they simply store the same value, Jackie and also Jackie, right? All right, so now let's show the answer. You know what? Before I do that, let me try to do a little bit of separator over here. I will visualize everything once I'm done with the third part, and I'll visualize that on the paper, and then that'll be done. Okay, just bear with me. Oops. Okay, so now what about that, right? All right, you can see, first of all, there are different answers, right? First of all, here, true and true for the second part, which means when you call equals and equals, they will compare just the contents. But now for equals, which will compare addresses over here, you can see here, let's see. For the first one, S1 and S2, as I explained before, since it's only literal, so they will be referring to the same objects like aliasing for space efficiency reason. But now S3 and S4, because they are assigned to explicitly created new objects of type string. So that means S3 equals S4 should be false. They are not the same objects. So try to visualize what's really happening now, right? Given we have drawn so many diagrams throughout the semester, hopefully it's not too difficult. All right, guys, I hope you're fine right now, up to now, right? Hopefully you're still following what I'm trying to say here. So now, to really make a very close connection to your lab, especially lab number 7, lab number 8. So now let's say this. Let's say your lab number 7. If you can recall a little bit about the design for the GUI, okay? Let me just open that here. Bear with me for 30 seconds. I want to show you that PDF quickly. Bear with me. I think this first topic I would like to speak about, I think it will be very useful because you might just get some confusion later. And this, I can tell you that this might well be some interview questions for programming. Let's say later on, if you go for any job related to Java, your prospective employer might actually ask you something about this. It's possible. Okay, I think I want lab 8 is actually fine. Okay, I just want to go to the GUI for lab 8. Okay, over here. Okay, let's say this. Let's say here, remember for your lab number 8, also similarly for lab number 7, we have 2 text fields over here for you to enter names of the players or users. Let's say if I enter Jackie over here, let's say Jackie, and also I enter another Jackie over here. So now I got 2 Jackie, right? And then we're gonna extract the value Jackie from this field over here, and also gonna extract the field for Jackie from here, and then we're gonna compare these 2 strings. I'm not gonna just develop the GUI from scratch. So instead, I'm gonna show you something just the same by using console application. You can think about extracting something from the text field from here. It's just like reading an input from the user using keyboard. Similar, right? So that's what I will do. But keep this in mind. So I think some of you actually may have this confusion before. So let me do the following. So what I would do is I'm gonna create some console application from here by using scanner, right? Let me do that quickly. So input will be new scanner system.in. Okay, and then sys out over here, let's say enter a string. And notice that here, I don't really say Jackie in the program, right? The user, when they actually launch the console application, they will actually enter the value. And then we're going to say string. So let's say S5, okay? And then will be input dot next line, right? That's something we did actually in so many labs. So I'm assuming that you're still okay, right? And then we can do another one. We can prompt the second string over here, enter another string. And then we're going to say string S6 will be assigned to input dot next line. Okay, and then we're going to do a very similar comparison over here. Okay, let me put it here. Of course, this will be 5 and 6. 5 and also 6 over here. All right, that's it, right? Very simple console application, just reading 2 strings and compare them. So now the question is, what if I enter from the keyboard Jackie for the first string, and then Jackie again for the second string? What's going to happen here, right? Let me illustrate that, and then you can put your answer on the chat if you like. Okay, so now, so these are from the previous 2 illustration. You can ignore that for now. So enter a string. So now I'm here, right? You can see I'm here right now, right? Enter a string. Let me say Jackie, right? Just like that. And then enter another string, Jackie. As soon as I enter, as soon as I hit return, enter now, it's going to run S5. So S5 somehow will be taking this string, and S6 will also be taking the second string. So what should be the answer? All right, let's take a look. I got true true. I got true true. Anybody else?
True.
Huh?
True.
True. That's what you think, right? Okay. Guys, it might be nice for you to think about, right? It's okay to be wrong, right? You'd rather not be wrong in the exam. It's okay to be wrong in the Q&A. All right, so it seems to me, majority of you who actually responded think that should be true. That's okay. Let's see. Let me say enter. False true. All right, let's see why. And I'll visualize it. What has happened was true is actually easy to understand because S5, S6, both of them are pointing, somehow they are both got the contents Jackie. That's easy to understand. That's why I said you can think about their cases, scenario number 1, scenario number 2, and scenario number 3. Somehow using equals might be okay in scenario number 1. However, there might be some other scenario which you forgot and you still use equals. That will actually bring you trouble. That's why I said it's a no-brainer. You can always think about just use dot equals if you want to compare string values. Okay. Now, the reason that it is false for this particular line, S5 equals S6, what it is suggesting is somehow S5 is pointing to this Jackie objects, string objects, which is different from S6, which is pointing to just another string object, which happens to be also Jackie. That's what's happening here. All right, so that's about the Eclipse part. I will highly recommend you actually take a look at the source code and then review it and then play with it if you wish. I'm going to make the source code available to you, okay? But let's now visualize what's really happening here. So, and then I'll take any further questions before I move on to the next question. All right, let's now take a look. So that's the code I just did, okay? And then let's now try to do review everything together by visualizing what's happening over here. So you can think about what's happening is whenever you actually got only a string literal like this, Jackie and also Jackie, right? Somehow the Java compiler, they can identify the string literal of the same value. So what's going to happen is when you launch the program, when you first launch the program, there will be some string objects that's already created. Think about like a string object, right? That's how we visualize objects. And then that one there simply just got the same Jackie literal, right? You know what? Since I put orange, maybe I should put orange over here. Like that, okay? And then what's going to happen is S1, S2, they will be pointing to the same Jackie object over here, right? Imagine that if I got another one, let's say S10, which is also equal to Jackie over here, if I did it, it will be something similar. So that means S3 will also be pointing to this particular string objects, right? So it doesn't matter. As long as the string literal values are really the same without any new keyword involved, so that will be the same objects. Okay, that's the first point. And then let's now do another point here. So here you can see very easily. So you can see that S1 equals S2. Yes, they are pointing to the same objects, right? And also S1 dot equals S2, since they are the same objects, so of course their contents are the same. And the second one here about new string and also new string. Whenever you see the new keyword, so that means you got to create a new object, right? So what this will do is it's going to create a new string over here. Let me do that quickly. String, and also this will be Jackie. And then S3 is going to point to it. And then this will be just another new keyword. So that will be pointed by S4. So that means S4 is pointing to this particular string objects, which is separate. All right. So far, so good. And then if you now try to compare S3 equals S4, of course, that should be false, right? You can see these two are actually not the same objects, right? They're not the same. Good. Finally, let's now take a look at the last one. So here, when we do enter a string, okay? So enter a string over here. And then let's say I simply just enter Jackie. Okay, it's as if you actually put some string value to the text field over here and then extract it from the GUI. Similar action, right? Just different ways of taking user input either from the keyboard or maybe from the touch screen of your mobile device. So if I do that, what's going to happen is when I say S5, it's assigned to input the next line. So when we try to extract this particular string value over here, what's going to happen is S5 is simply just going to point to a new string objects. And that would be Jackie over here. And then similarly, if we say enter another string, so we'll say enter another string over here, and then let's say we also enter the same Jackie over here, right? So it's going to be just another string object being created, and S6 will actually point to it. So that will just be another one. So I'll put here. So S6 actually pointing to just another string objects, which is Jackie. Right? So now if you try to compare that, so now S5 equals S6 should be false, right? And the contents are the same, so that'll be true. All right, so this is a complete response to your fellow student question over here. I'm not sure if you're here, but I will just take any further question you might have about this point here. Guys, any question about using equal versus dot equals for string? Any questions? All right, hearing none, I suppose everybody's okay. Okay, Laura have a question here. Will I post the solutions of lab 7, lab 8? I think maybe I won't, because for your lab number 7, lab number 8, I think for your lab number 7, the structure of your Java code will be very similar to your lab number 6. So it should be so if you so hopefully that will be easy for you to actually try to connect. And for lab number 8, it's more about 2D array. But I would say, you know what? Okay, I'll maybe I should do it, right? I think I can see why you might need it. Okay, let me put it here. Lab 7, lab 8 solutions. Okay, I'll try to do that either later today or maybe tomorrow. Okay, so I will make an announcement when it's released for lab 7, lab number 8. Okay, any more question about the string comparison here? Any more? Okay. All right, the next one here, it's actually a number of questions here. So it's more about the Java API. Okay, let's now read the first one here. Okay, I got only about 2 more. Okay, so here that's more about the weekly tutorial, week number 12. Okay, so let me just take a look at that. Okay, so let me answer this very first question here. If I switch my workspace to your weekly lab, okay, let me do that. Let me suggest the particular change that your fellow student was asking, and then we'll see if that works, and that will give you some brief explanation, okay? So if you go to your week number 12 Java tutorial video over here, and then go to model over here, and then you go to birthday book version number 1. Version number 1, remember, is the one implemented using Arraylist, okay? And then if you go to, let's say, you can see that over here, we actually declare some helper method called index of, right? That's what we did. And the index of actually simply takes on parameter of type string, right? That's what we did. Your fellow student's question was, why didn't we use the Arraylist method index of instead, right? That's a question. So we actually did index of practice for the Arraylist. So I assume you actually know how it works. So you can see that's the index of for this particular birthday book V1 version 1 class. But why can we not just use the index of method from the Arraylist? Let's see how we can do it. Let me now go to index of. Oh, sorry. Let's see here. Let's say for this method particularly, right? You can see here, I say this. So this is referring to birthday book v1. That's a context object, right? And then if I say if I'm calling index of, I'm really calling this particular index of method. That's what I'm doing. Okay. What if I do as your fellow student suggested? I say this imp. All right. You can see. Okay, it's a dramatic change over here. This imp is referring to this particular attributes over here that we declare of type array list. And then this will compile because if I go back here, index of is actually a method from the array list class. Let me go there very quickly. If you just go to the array list API page and then you go to index of, right? You can see this API method summary. You can see index of takes any objects over here. Any object, it can be birthday book entry, it can be string, it can be integer, it can be scanner, it can be any objects, right? We spoke about what object really means briefly in the lecture and also in the tutorial. I mean, in the also in the Q&A. So given as object over here, so having this is actually okay, right? But now the question is whether or not this is actually going to work. That's the issue, right? And if you even be a little bit sharper on your eyes, you can see that Eclipse actually showed to you some warning. I'll let you read the warning that's actually made by the Eclipse, which is pretty good. All right. So after this, I will simply just run the JUnit test. You can see that we are failing the test associated with version number 1. And more precisely, it's more about something to do. You can run the debugger. It's something to do with the adding, actually retrieving the birthday. Removing the birthday actually from the birthday book. That's something I'll let you put a breakpoint. Okay, let me give you some quick explanation why this wouldn't work. Apparently, if you simply use the index of method from the array list, you will definitely fail the test. So that's not good. But if I undo it back to the index of from the current class, I will be okay. So the reason is here, if you think about the original one over here, if I simply say this index of, what that will do is actually going to go over all the entries in the birthday book, and then you will try to say e.getName, and then compare against the name arguments over here. That's what I'm doing. That's the correct way of doing it. On the other hand, if I try to do here to say, if you saw what I did previously, if I say this.imp.index of, so imp, this.imp is the context object right now. What's its type? It's actually an array list of birthday book entry. So that means every object in the array list is actually a birthday book entry objects. In that case, you're really comparing, let me go to that particular call, you're really comparing string against birthday book entry. So you're really comparing apple with orange. So that's not the right comparison. Okay. Okay, that's kind of the detailed explanation I would like to make. Right. So to your fellow students' question, why can we not use the index of instead? It's because you will be comparing birthday book entry against string, which will compile in this case because the parameter type is simply objects, but it wouldn't actually work. All right, so that's something I like. That's my response. Any question about the first question here? All right, so if you haven't got a chance to really go over week number 12 tutorial videos, well, I would suggest you do it because it's actually something that will be covered by the exam. All right. Let me go back to the Q&A. Okay, so now let me go back to the second question here. So this one here is a little bit to do with the small example I did about using the math model library, the random method. The random method over here, and then remember the random method will actually return some random number between 0 and 1, right? More precisely, it's going to be if you got 0 and 1 over here, of course this should be empty over here, right? It's exclusive. It's going to return some value in the middle randomly, right? So now your fellow student's question was, what if I want to return some random number between 5 and 48? Let's say between 5 and 48, or in more general sense, between x and y. So how do we do that? Right? It's a nice question here. So now how do we do that? I'll give you a little bit of visual hints over here, and then I'll give you the solution. You can think about why it will work. You may just want to think about the proportion of this particular position over here, how long it is from here to here proportionally. So that you can somehow make it correspond to the number that you're going to produce and how long it is from this original point. And the proportion over here, so let's say this proportion here, it will be, let's say A. The proportion over here should be B. The proportion should be the same. All right? That's a very quick conceptual hint for you, right? After that, you can do something like this. Okay, let me go over that very quickly. Math.random is actually going to give you whatever this part it is. Okay, and then you're saying that I want to say, let's say I start with x, the lower bound over here, so that'll be x, and then y minus x. Y minus x is basically about how long this particular part it is, right? However, I only want to get the proportion of this long. So that means this proportion over here, right? And then I will simply just multiply by whatever this number is, it is. And then eventually, I just want an integer, so I'll do some casting. Right? That's it's a nice challenge for you to think about how you can actually massage the randomly generated number between 0 and 1 into between x and y in general. Okay? Any question about this? Okay, and then there is another reference for you. This will not be really covered, but for those of you who might want to go a little bit deeper into generating random number. So this is just one example for you. How do you randomly generate, let's say, 21 unique numbers from this particular range? So number one, we want to generate between this range over here, and number two, we want to generate 21 numbers. Number three, we want all the numbers to be without any duplicates. So there is a way to do this in Java, right? So this is a very long line of code over here. I will just supply that to you, right? If you're interested in developing this further, I'll leave that to you, okay? Okay, one final question over here, which is about, for the Arraylist class, why does the add method have the return type Boolean, right? So I think that it's just about the design for the API for the Arraylist. So if you go back to the Arraylist class, if you go to, I will give you two examples. One is about the add. You can see it returns a Boolean. And then we got another one here, which is called remove. Let's say remove some objects or remove some index. Let's say, let's talk about the remove over here, right? You just remove some objects here. In that case, it's also going to return a Boolean. Okay, it's just the design it is, but however, I would say if you ever want to design methods for your class for add and remove, it seems to me there should be a mutator rather than accessors returning some Boolean. Okay, so if you ask me why, I would say that's just about the design for the API for Arraylist. The developers of the Arraylist decide to have a return type. But let me show you how you can use the return type if you want to. But for accessor method, you can definitely just use a standalone call if you wish. Let me just give you a short example quickly. Okay. All right, if I go to here, let's call that, let's see this. What should that be? Let's Arraylist Tester. Okay, with the main method here. All right, so now let's say we have an array list for the Java util package and then list. Oh, sorry, it should be a string. And then you'll be new array list. All right, empty list to begin with, right? And then let's now try to do some removal. What I did in the lectures, I simply just used the remove without using the returning value. So it could have said list remove, for example, A over here. So this will be okay, right? If I simply execute this, nothing. If I run this application here, you can see nothing here, right? Just nothing. However, I can somehow use the return value if I wish. Remember, it's going to return the Boolean. Let me just cancel this, okay? I can say Boolean. Somehow you can check to see whether it's removed. System out, and then you can say removed over here. Okay, so that's how you can use a Boolean variable if you wish. But somehow it's mixing the accessor together with returning something. It's not really a good separation of concern, right? I also mentioned that in the Q&A. So now if I try to do this, you can see that it will simply say false. It's simply not removed. A is actually not removed because this does not even exist in the list, right? That's why it's false. And another example here, what about add? You can also do another Boolean over here to say added, and then you can say list.add over here. Let's say now I want to add A into the list, right? And then I can now try to see whether it's being added. All right, and now it should be added. Of course it should be. So we should really expect to see true, right? It has been added, right? And then one more thing to show to you. So now if I say removed, is assigned to basically, let me just copy the entire line over here. Previously, this Boolean value will be simply false because there's no A for you to remove from the empty list. But now since we have added A into the list, so now if we call this same line to remove, it should be removed. Okay, so now let me just do the same printout over here. And if I do that, it's going to say remove should be true, right? It has been removed. All right, so that's a very quick clarification about how you can use the add and remove for the array list if you want to make use of the return value. However, you don't need to, right? You can just ignore the return value for accessor methods. That's something I also discussed in the lecture. Okay. All right, so now let me go back to here. All right, that's all about all the questions I can see from this particular part. Okay. All right, finally, this is actually from one of your written tests about this particular method. I'll just say very quickly. So get distance from origin. So this is actually some accessor method returning integer. However, if I simply write maybe p dot get distance from origin without using that as a value, so it's not very good. It's not very useful. However, there will be no compilation error generated cost. That's also something I mentioned in the lecture. So this is actually okay. Okay. So you can say that no compilation error, but not very useful. All right, that's the principle over here. Oh, Sarah. Oh, very good. No problem. It's a nice question. And let me draw a little bit connection to this question here, so you can apply the same principle. You can see for add and remove from the array list. Let me mention to you again. You can see remove and also add. Remove and add over here. You can see they are by definition accessors. So that's why I try to use them like accessor here for you. You can see for remove, I can return something to be stored into some Boolean variable, and also for the add, I can also save the return value as a Boolean variable, right? I can use them like accessor. I can also choose to do the following. I can also say maybe list dot add, for example, A, like a standalone call, and also I can also say list dot remove, maybe B, right? So that's kind of the way I wrote it in the lecture example and also tutorial example. So which way you want to take is kind of up to you. However, again, when you are trying to design your own classes, you should not really try to make an accessor actually try to modify some values inside, right? That's a principle you would like to stick to if possible. All right, so that's about all the questions I got from the Google Doc, right? I guess that's about it. So I'll be happy to open the floor now. If you got any further questions, if you have, go ahead, please. Guys, you can think about it. I'm gonna pause a bit longer because that might be your final chance to speak to me before your exam. But I'll wait a bit longer. Okay, just see if you got any questions. Any questions? Anybody? There might just be some maybe conflict on the exam, I guess, with the Q&A session, but it's okay. So guys, are you sure you're fine for the for the study? Okay, I'll wait just one more moment before I need to call it a day, right? All right. So guys, I think maybe we should stop here. And then I think I cover almost everything that you're supposed to know about the exam. And then I think it will be very important for you to review as many examples as possible before the exam day. So during the exam, you might find that there might be many tracing questions there. So again, whether to use the Eclipse or try to trace by hand, I'll leave the choice to you. But you got to be careful to balance the time. All right, so that's about it. And then thank you very much. And then I will stop the recording over here. And best of luck to your exam. All right, you guys take care. Bye-bye.